The mafia boss walked into his own bar in disguise, hunting for the traitor who'd been leaking his secrets. The new waitress poured his wine, leaned in close, and whispered 5 words that made his blood run cold. What he didn't know, she wasn't the mole he was looking for, but she'd just become the only person who could save him from the real one. The rain hammered against the windows of Santoro's like angry fists demanding entry. Rafael Costa, at least that's what his fake ID said, pushed through the heavy oak door and stepped into the warm amber glow of the bar he'd built from blood money and broken promises. Nobody recognized him. Good. Raf had spent 3 hours in a makeup chair that morning, letting his guy Marco work magic with prosthetics and hair dye. The sharp jawline that made him recognizable in every back alley from Brooklyn to Boston was now softer, rounder. His signature slicked-back black hair had become a messy brown mop with streaks of premature gray. Even his own mother wouldn't have known him. Not that she was alive to try. He chose a corner booth where he could watch the entire room. Tuesday nights were always slow, which is exactly why he'd picked tonight. Fewer eyes, fewer problems. The leather creaked as he settled in, and he pulled out a burner phone, pretending to scroll while his eyes did the real work. 3 bartenders. Check. 2 security guys by the door, his guys, though they didn't know their boss was 10 feet away. Check. The new waitress everyone had been talking about. There. She was wiping down a table near the window, her movements efficient but not rushed. Evelyn something. Eve. She'd been hired 2 weeks ago when Maria quit suddenly. Luca had done the background check himself. Single mother, 2 jobs, clean record. Desperate enough not to ask questions about the occasional late-night private parties in the back room. Raf watched her for a full minute. She was pretty in an understated way. Dark hair pulled into a ponytail, tired eyes that had seen too many double shifts, and a smile she wore like armor. Nothing about her screamed danger. But then again, the best snakes never rattled before they struck. His empire was hemorrhaging secrets. 3 shipments intercepted in 2 months. 4 safe houses raided. The FBI knew things they shouldn't know. Names, dates, routes. Someone inside his organization was talking, and Raf had narrowed it down to 17 people who had access to sensitive information. Eve wasn't on that list. She was too new, too low-level. But Raf hadn't survived 20 years in this business by ignoring his instincts, and his instincts said something about her didn't add up. She approached his table with a practiced smile, order pad in hand. Evening. What can I get you? Raf kept his voice slightly higher than normal, added a nervous edge. What do you recommend? I'm not really a regular drinker. Eve's eyes flicked over him, assessing, calculating. Depends. You looking to impress someone or forget someone? Neither. Just had a long day. Then the Burlo. It's smooth, won't give you a headache, and it's honest. Honest. Interesting word choice. I'll take it. She wrote nothing down. The order was too simple, but her hand moved across the pad anyway. Raf caught the motion. His pulse quickened. Was she writing something else? Be right back, she said. He watched her walk to the bar, watched her pour the wine with the confidence of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. But there was something else. She glanced up at the security camera in the corner just for a split second, and Raf saw it. Recognition. Not fear, not curiosity. Recognition. His phone buzzed. A text from Luca. Camera feed just cut out for 8 seconds. System's coming back now. Might be nothing. Raf's jaw tightened. Might be nothing. Or might be everything. Eve returned with the wine, setting it down with a gentle clink. The deep red liquid caught the light, swirling like blood in water. Raf reached for it, began to lift it to his lips. That's when she leaned in. Her voice was barely a whisper, just 5 words, soft as silk and sharp as a blade. FBI says hi, Mr. Santoro. Time stopped. The glass froze halfway to his mouth. Every muscle in Raf's body locked. His mind raced through 1,000 calculations in 2 seconds. Exits, weapons, witnesses, exposure. Eve straightened up, her expression never changing, and walked away. Calm. Collected. like she'd just asked if he needed extra napkins. Raf set the glass down with a steady hand that betrayed none of the chaos in his chest. His eyes tracked her across the room. She didn't run, didn't signal, didn't do anything except return to wiping down tables. The security guards by the door hadn't moved. The bartenders were laughing at something. The other customers, a couple on a date, an old man nursing whiskey, showed no signs of alarm. It was just him and her, and those 5 words hanging in the air like gun smoke. She knew. She knew who he was, knew what he looked like under the disguise. Which meant she'd been studying him. Which meant this wasn't random. Raf pulled out his phone and typed a message to Luca. Run deep background on Eve Carter. Everything. And I mean everything. Check federal databases. Check witness protection. Check Jane Does from the last 5 years. Do it now. The response came back in seconds. On it. He looked at the wine. Beautiful, expensive, probably perfect. He didn't touch it. Never eat or drink anything when you've been compromised. Rule number 3 of staying alive. Eve glanced his way once. Their eyes met across the room, and Raf saw it clearly now, what he'd missed before. She wasn't scared of him. She was expecting him. This whole thing was a trap or a test or a message. But here's what she didn't know. Raf Santoro hadn't become the most powerful crime boss in the Northeast by walking into traps unprepared. If she wanted to play games, he'd play. But by his rules. He stood, dropped 2 20s on the table, exact payment plus a generous tip, and walked toward the door. As he passed the bar, he caught his reflection in the mirror behind the bottles. Even disguised, even rattled, he looked like what he was, a predator. Outside, the rain had turned to mist. Raf walked 3 blocks before getting into the black sedan where Marco waited. How'd it go, boss? Raf stared out at the city lights bleeding through the fog. We've got a problem. What kind? The kind that knows my name. He pulled out his phone and opened the security app for the bar. Rewound the footage to 8 minutes ago. Watched Eve approach his table. Watched her lean in. Then watched the feed cut to static for exactly 8 seconds, right when she'd said those 5 words. Someone had jammed the signal. Someone had made sure there was no record of what she'd told him. Which meant she wasn't working alone. Raf leaned back in his seat as Marco pulled into traffic. The mole he'd been hunting wasn't some scared accountant or ambitious lieutenant. It was her. Or she was part of it. Either way, he'd just been checkmated in his own bar. But here's the thing about chess. The game isn't over until the king falls. And Raf Santoro never fell. Take me to the safe house, he said quietly. And tell Luca to bring everyone who touched Eve Carter's hiring paperwork. All of them. You want them questioned? Raf's eyes stayed fixed on the rain-blurred streets. I want them terrified. The safe house smelled like cigarettes and paranoia. Raf sat in the converted basement, surrounded by 7 monitors showing live feeds from every corner of his empire. But his eyes stayed locked on one screen, the bar, where Eve Carter moved through her shift like nothing had happened. Luca burst through the door, tablet in hand. Boss, you're not gonna believe this. Try me. Eve Carter doesn't exist. Not really, Luca swiped through files. The social security number is real, but it belonged to a woman who died in a car accident 3 years ago in Ohio. Someone resurrected it, built a whole identity around it. Bank account, rental history, employment records, all manufactured in the last 8 months. Raf's fingers drummed against the armrest. Professional work. Federal work. Who approved her hiring? Dino. He said she walked in with a resume, interviewed well, had experience. He vouched for her personally. Dino Marcelli. The bar's accountant for 6 years. Quiet, efficient, boring. Exactly the kind of guy you'd overlook. Bring Dino in. Tonight. Don't tell him why. Luca nodded and left. Raf turned back to the monitors, rewinding footage from the past 2 weeks. He watched Eve's patterns, when she arrived, when she left, who she talked to. She was careful, never staying late, never asking questions. But 3 times, always on Thursdays, she'd taken her break in the storage room. The storage room had no cameras. Raf had made sure of that. It's where he kept certain items the health inspector shouldn't see. He picked up his encrypted phone and dialed a number he rarely used. Yeah. The voice was rough, Russian.
Victor.
I need a favor. Santoro. Long time. What kind of favor? The kind that involves following someone very, very carefully. 12 miles across the city, Eve Carter sat in a parking garage inside a rental car that wasn't registered to any name the mob would recognize. Her hands shook as she dialed her handler. Agent Ross picked up on the first ring. Tell me you didn't blow your cover. I made contact. Direct contact. Silence. Then, you did what? Carter, your job was to observe and report, not. He was sitting right there, Ross. Disguised, but it was him. I verified through facial recognition before the feed cut. If I didn't act, we'd lose the chance to rattle him. Rattling him gets you killed. Eve closed her eyes. Her heart was still hammering from the encounter. When she leaned in and whispered those words, she'd seen something flicker in Santoro's eyes. Not fear, but calculation. Like a computer running a million scenarios per second. He won't kill me. Not yet. He needs to know what I know, who I'm working with. I've got time. Time? Ross laughed bitterly. You've got maybe 48 hours before he figures out your game. Then you're either dead or compromised. Pull out.
Now.
Not until we identify the shipment route for the arms deal. That's what we came for. Carter. She hung up. Let Ross stew. She'd been undercover for 6 weeks, and this was the closest the Bureau had gotten to Santoro in 5 years. She wasn't about to waste it because her handler had cold feet. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Storage room. Thursday.
2 Uhr nachts. Come alone.
Eve stared at the message. It wasn't from Ross. It wasn't from anyone in the Bureau. Someone inside Santoro's operation wanted to talk. She deleted the text and started the car. At the safe house, Dino Marcelli sat sweating in a metal chair while Lucas stood behind him, arms crossed. Raf entered slowly, studying the accountant. Dino was 52, balding, wore glasses that were always slightly crooked. He'd worked for the Santoro family since Raf's father ran things. Dino, you've been with us a long time. Yes, sir, Mr. Santoro. 12 years total, 6 at the bar. So, you understand how things work. Loyalty.
Trust.
Family. Dino nodded vigorously. Of course. Always. Raf pulled up a chair and sat backward on it, casual. Then explain to me why you hired a ghost. The color drained from Dino's face. What? Eve Carter. The waitress you personally approved. She doesn't exist. Her entire identity is fabricated. Federal work, from what my guys tell me. Raf leaned forward. Now, either you're incredibly stupid, or you're working with someone. Which is it? Mr. Santoro, I swear, I didn't know. She had references, I called them, they checked out. Who gave you her name? Dino's mouth opened and closed like a fish. She just walked in. I thought. You thought nothing. Because you weren't supposed to think. You were supposed to do. Raf's voice dropped to a whisper. Who told you to hire her, Dino? A long pause. Then, quietly. Nobody told me to hire her. But someone told me you'd be asking about her. Raf's blood went cold.
Who?
Dino looked up, and there was something in his eyes now, not fear, but resignation. They said if you came asking questions, I should give you this. He pulled a folded paper from his pocket. Luca moved to intercept, but Raf waved him off. He took the paper and opened it. Inside, in neat handwriting, the fox hunts the cat. But who's hunting the fox? Beneath it, a phone number. Raf stared at the message. Someone was playing three-dimensional chess, and he just realized he wasn't the only player who knew the rules. He looked at Dino. You're going to call this number.
Right now.
And you're going to ask for instructions. Dino's hands trembled as he pulled out his phone. Outside, in the darkness, Victor the Russian watched the safe house through night vision binoculars and spoke into his radio. Target is inside. Secondary target still mobile. But boss, we've got a third party. Black SUV, government plates, parked 2 blocks east. The voice on the other end crackled. FBI? Maybe. Or something worse. The restaurant overlooked the docks, all exposed brick and soft jazz, the kind of place where criminals and politicians ate at neighboring tables and pretended not to recognize each other. Raf had chosen it carefully, public enough to seem safe, private enough to have a real conversation. Eve arrived exactly on time, wearing a simple black dress that looked expensive but wasn't. She'd done her homework on how to blend into his world. Mr. Costa, she smiled, playing along with his alias. This is unexpected. Raf stood, pulling out her chair. You've been doing excellent work. I like to reward loyalty. He let the word loyalty hang in the air between them like a knife. She sat gracefully, and he caught the slight tension in her shoulders.
Good.
She should be nervous. I'm just doing my job, Eve said. That's what I wanted to talk about. Your job, Raf signaled the waiter, who appeared instantly. We'll start with the 2015 Brunello. The lady will have water, please. Still, not sparkling. The waiter nodded and vanished. Raf studied her across the candlelight. You don't drink. Not on duty. There it was. The slip he'd been waiting for. On duty. Not when I'm working or during my shift, the phrase cops used, federal agents used, people who thought of their job as a mission rather than a paycheck. Raf smiled, warm and dangerous. It's your night off. Relax. Old habit. Eve met his gaze without flinching. My father was an alcoholic. I watched what it did to him. So I don't touch the stuff. Smooth recovery. She'd even added emotional weight to make it believable. If Raf hadn't already known she was lying about everything, he might have bought it. I'm sorry to hear that. Family shapes us, doesn't it? He leaned back as the wine arrived. My father taught me that trust is currency. You can't buy it, can't steal it. You can only earn it or betray it. There's no middle ground. Eve's eyes flickered with something, recognition, maybe understanding. Sounds like a hard man. He was a realist. Raf swirled his wine, but didn't drink. He also taught me to recognize patterns. For example, did you know that every Thursday for the past 3 weeks, you've taken your break at exactly 9:47 p.m.? Same time, every week. Like clockwork. Her expression didn't change, but her fingers tightened slightly around her water glass. The dinner rush ends around then. It's the logical time for a break. Logical, Raf repeated. You're a logical person. I respect that. So, let me be logical with you. That first night, when you served me wine, do you remember what you said? The air between them crystallized into something sharp. Eve's face remained calm, but Raf saw her pulse jump at her throat. I said a lot of things that night. Which part? The part where you whispered 5 words that only someone with very specific information would know. Eve set down her glass with deliberate care. Mr. Costa, I think there's been some confusion.
Rafael.
My real name is Raphael, he leaned forward. But you already knew that, didn't you? Because you're not really a waitress, and I'm not really just a manager. The waiter approached with menus, sensed the tension, and quickly retreated. Eve's mask cracked just slightly, a flash of calculation behind her eyes. If you thought I was a threat, I'd already be dead. So why am I here? Because you remind me of someone. The word surprised even Raf. He hadn't planned to say them. My sister. She had your eyes calm, even when the world was burning. She became a federal agent because she believed in justice. He paused. She died during a sting operation 8 years ago. Bad intel, wrong warehouse, and the people she was trying to arrest knew she was coming. This was true. All of it. Sofia Santoro had been the family's shame and Raf's secret pride. She tried to save the world, and the world had killed her for it. Eve's expression softened, genuine emotion breaking through.
I'm sorry. So am I.
Because here's what I learned from losing her. The Bureau doesn't protect its people. They're tools, assets, numbers on a spreadsheet. When you become inconvenient, they erase you. Raf's voice dropped. Is that what you want? To be erased? What do you want from me? The truth.
Who sent you?
What do they know? And more importantly, he pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. Dino, slumped in a chair, very much alive, but very much terrified. Who else inside my organization is working with you? Eve stared at the photo, and Raf saw it. The momentary confusion. She didn't know about Dino, which meant either she was an incredible actress or someone was playing both of them. I'm working alone, she said finally. Liar. Then kill me. She leaned forward, and her eyes blazed with defiance. If you're so sure I'm your enemy, why are we having dinner? Why show me your cards? Because you're right, Raf thought. Because something doesn't add up, and I need to know why. Instead, he said, because I want to offer you a choice. Work with me to find the real leak, or keep playing whatever game the FBI sent you to play and end up like my sister. A footnote in someone else's war. Eve's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her face went pale. What? Raf demanded. She turned the phone toward him. A news alert. Federal agent found dead in apparent suicide. Corruption allegations surface. The agent's photo loaded. Agent Ross.
Her handler.
Eve's hands started to shake. I need to leave.
Now.
But Raf was faster. He gripped her wrist across the table, not hard, but firm.
No.
You need to tell me what's really going on. Because if your handler is dead, that means someone just cut your lifeline. She looked at him, and for the first time, he saw real fear in her eyes. I think, she whispered, we're both being set up. The shipping yard at 2 a.m. was a graveyard of rusted containers and broken dreams. Raf stood in the shadows with 5 of his men, waiting for the delivery that should have been routine. 2 crates of untraceable firearms from a Serbian contact, payment already transferred, no complications. Eve was 30 feet away, zip-tied to a support beam inside an empty container. Insurance, Luca had called it. Raf called it strategy. If she was really FBI, she'd need to see this transaction to build her case. If she wasn't, well, he'd know soon enough. After Ross's suicide, Eve had told him everything. The Bureau's operation, the timeline, her mission to infiltrate and identify Raf's arms network. But she'd also told him something more disturbing. Ross had been acting strange for weeks, making phone calls she wasn't cleared to hear, meeting with people off the books. Shipments late, Luca muttered, checking his watch. Serbians are never late. Raf's instinct screamed. Pull everyone back.
Now.
Boss, we paid half up front. If we don't take delivery. The first gunshot shattered the night. Luca dropped, clutching his shoulder. Raf dove behind a container as automatic weapons fire erupted from 3 directions. His men scattered, returning fire, but they were surrounded. It's Vargas, someone shouted. The Colombians. Raf's mind raced. Miguel Vargas ran the rival operation out of Miami. They'd had an understanding, territories divided, no bloodshed. This wasn't business. This was an execution. He army crawled toward the container where Eve was trapped. Bullets pinged off metal above his head. Through the chaos, he saw 3 of his men go down. Not wounded.
Dead.
Eve's eyes went wide when he appeared. Cut me loose.
Why?
So you can run. So, I can help, you idiot. She twisted her wrists. I'm a federal agent. I've been through tactical training. Cut me loose, or we both die here. Another burst of gunfire. Closer now. Raf pulled out his knife and sliced through the zip ties. Eve grabbed a fallen gun and moved like water, smooth, practiced, deadly. She took position at the container's edge and fired 3 controlled shots. Someone screamed in the darkness. East side, 2 shooters, she called out. Raf provided covering fire while his remaining men regrouped. But something was wrong. The Colombians were hurting them, pushing them toward the water. Then he saw it, the glint of a sniper scope on the warehouse roof. Down, Raf tackled Eve as the shot rang out. The bullet hit where her head had been. They roll behind a forklift, breathing hard. Eve's dress was torn, her face smudged with dirt and blood that wasn't hers. "This is a setup," she gasped. "Not just for you. For both of us." "What are you talking about?" "Listen." She grabbed his jacket. Ross was dirty. "I found payments in his office from someone, but I didn't know who. What if it was Vargas? What if he's been feeding information to both sides?" The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The intercepted shipments. The raided safe houses. The FBI knowing too much. It wasn't Eve leaking information, it was Ross, playing both organizations against each other while Vargas cleaned up. "We need to leave." Now, Raph spoke into his radio. "Everyone to the boats. Emergency extraction." They ran through the maze of containers, Eve keeping pace beside him. She moved like she belonged in this world of violence and shadows, and Raph realized with surprise that he trusted her at his back. The boats were hidden at the far end of the wharf, escape routes Raph had prepared years ago for situations exactly like this. Luca and 2 others were already there, bleeding but alive. "Get them out," Raph ordered. "Take the north route." "What about you, boss?" "I'm right behind you." It was a lie. Raph had spotted something during their escape, one of Vargas's dead men, sprawled near a shipping container. And attached to his belt was a small black device. An FBI tracker. Eve saw it too. Her face went white. "That's Bureau Tech. Current generation. Only active agents have access. So either you're lying, or someone else inside the FBI is working with Vargas." She knelt beside the body, examining the tracker. "This was activated tonight. Recently. Someone wanted to make sure this ambush was tracked and documented."
Why?
"Because," she looked up at him, understanding dawning. "Because if both of us die here, with FBI tracking evidence and your men's bodies, it looks like a gang war that went bad. The Bureau closes your file. Vargas eliminates his competition. And whoever's pulling the strings gets exactly what they want." Sirens wailed in the distance. Police, probably FBI too. Coming fast. Raph pulled Eve to her feet. "If we run together, we're both fugitives." "I know. Your career is over." "I know that too," she met his eyes. "But I didn't sign up to be a pawn in someone else's game. Ross was my mentor. If he died because he got too greedy or too scared, I need to know why." Raph made a decision that would have gotten him killed in the old days. He grabbed her hand. "Then we find out together. But from now on, we trust no one. Not your people, not mine." Agreed. They ran toward the boats as the night exploded with sirens and searchlights. Behind them, the wharf burned with evidence that would tell a story, just not the true one. And somewhere in the city, Dino Marcelli sat in a darkened office, making a phone call. "It's done," he said quietly. "They both survived. Just like you wanted." The voice on the other end laughed. "Perfect. Now we move to phase 2". Eve woke to the smell of coffee and gun oil. She bolted upright, instinct screaming, reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. Her eyes adjusted to the dim light. She was on a couch in a small apartment, sparse furniture, blackout curtains, one exit she could see. A safe house. Raph sat across from her in an armchair, perfectly still, a pistol resting casually on his knee. He'd been watching her sleep. "How long have you been sitting there?" Eve's voice was rough. 3 hours. He pushed a coffee mug across the table. "It's cold, but it's caffeine." She didn't touch it. "Where are we?" "Outskirts. A place only 2 people know about." He paused. "One now. The other died last year." Eve scanned for exits again. The door behind Raph, one window to her left, probably nailed shut. Her service weapon was gone, her phone too. She was trapped with a man who had every reason to kill her. "Relax, Agent Carter. If I wanted you dead, you wouldn't have woken up." "That's not as comforting as you think it is." Raph almost smiled. "You saved 2 of my men last night. That bullet you took out the East shooter. Clean shot, center mass." "Where'd you train?" "Quantico. Top of my tactical class." Eve finally reached for the coffee, Figured if he'd poisoned it, she was dead anyway. You're not bad yourself. That move behind the forklift saved my life. I've had practice. They sat in silence, two predators taking measure of each other. The adrenaline had worn off, leaving behind the reality of their situation. Eve was a federal agent consorting with a wanted criminal. Raph was trusting someone who'd been sent to destroy him. I found her real identity, Raph said finally. He tossed a folder onto the table. Special Agent Evelyn Carter. 7 years with the Bureau. Organized Crime Division. Your specialty is long-term undercover work. You helped bring down the Moretti family in Chicago, the Bratva network in Seattle, and before this assignment, you were chasing a human trafficking ring in Texas. Eve stared at the folder. How? I have resources. Good ones, he leaned forward. But here's what's interesting. 3 months ago, you requested a transfer. You wanted out of undercover work. The official reason was burnout, but that's not the whole truth, is it?
Her jaw tightened.
You don't know anything about me. I know your handler died yesterday. I know the Bureau hasn't sent a retrieval team for you, which means either they think you're compromised or they're letting you twist in the wind. And I know, he pulled out another document, that Agent Ross opened a bank account in the Caymans 4 months ago. Same week your assignment began. Eve grabbed the paper. Account statements.
Wire transfers.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars from shell corporations she recognized, Vargas's money laundering fronts. Ross was being paid to sabotage both operations, Raph continued. Yours and mine. Feed you just enough information to keep you hooked. Feed me just enough paranoia to tear my organization apart from the inside. Meanwhile, Vargas eliminates his competition, and the FBI closes your file as a failed operation. But Ross is dead. Which means someone decided he'd outlived his usefulness. Raph stood, paced to the window. I've been in this business 20 years, Agent Carter. I've seen setups, double crosses, betrayals. This is something else. Someone's orchestrating a war, and we're the soldiers who are supposed to kill each other. Eve processed the information, her training kicking in. If Ross was dirty, then the evidence I collected is worthless. Contaminated chain of custody. Any half-decent lawyer would shred it. She wanted to argue, to defend the Bureau, to believe there was still honor in the system. But she'd seen too much in 7 years. The politics, the compromises, the agents who cared more about career advancement than justice. What do you want from me? She asked finally. Raph turned from the window. I want the same thing you do. The truth. Someone is burning both our worlds down, and I don't like being played. He walked to a desk and pulled out an encrypted laptop. I have access to ledgers, communications, transaction records for my entire network. Information the FBI would kill for. You're offering to give me evidence against yourself? I'm offering to give you evidence against the people who are actually destroying lives. Vargas runs drugs, weapons, and human beings like cargo. Ross enabled him. And there's someone above both of them, someone with enough power to manipulate federal investigations and orchestrate gang wars. Eve stood, closing the distance between them. And what do you get out of this? You give me access to the Bureau's database on Vargas. His operations, his contacts, his protection. You help me find who inside my organization is still feeding him information, because it's not just Ross. Someone on my end is dirty too. You think it's Dino. I know it's Dino. But I don't know who he reports to. Raph extended his hand.
Temporary alliance.
We find the real enemy together, burn them down, then we go back to being on opposite sides. Deal? Eve looked at his hand, scarred knuckles, steady fingers, the hand of someone who'd killed people. She should arrest him. She should find a phone, call her supervisor, burn this safe house down with both of them inside if necessary. Instead, she shook his hand.
One rule, she said. No innocent casualties.
We do this clean. Agreed.
No civilians.
They stood there, hands clasped, sealing a pact that would either save them or damn them both. Raph released her hand and opened the laptop. Then let's get to work. Because whoever set up that ambush knows we survived, and they're not going to wait long before trying again. Eve pulled up a chair beside him. Show me the ledgers. As they worked side by side, Neither of them noticed the small camera hidden in the smoke detector, transmitting their every word to a server 3,000 miles away. In a penthouse office overlooking Manhattan, a figure watched the feed and smiled. Phase 2, complete, they murmured. Now they trust each other.
Perfect.
Eve waited until Raph fell asleep before she made her move. It was 4 a.m. He'd finally crashed around 3, exhausted from analyzing financial records and plotting their next steps. She'd pretended to sleep on the couch until his breathing steadied into the deep rhythm of someone truly unconscious. Now she moved silently through the safe house, borrowed one of Raph's burner phones, and slipped out into the pre-dawn darkness. She had to know for certain. The FBI field office was a 20-minute drive. Eve parked 3 blocks away and approached on foot, using the maintenance entrance, where the security was lighter. Her badge still worked. They hadn't revoked her access yet, which meant either the bureau didn't know she'd gone rogue, or they were waiting to see what she'd do. The hallways were empty, just a skeleton crew on night shift. Eve avoided the cameras she knew about and gambled that the new ones Ross had installed were in his office. He'd been paranoid about people snooping through his files. His office door was still sealed with crime scene tape. Eve picked the lock in 15 seconds. Inside, everything looked untouched. The police had taken his computer, but they'd missed what Eve came for, the burner tablet Ross kept in a hollowed outlaw book. Every handler had one. Unofficial communications, off-the-books contacts, the things you couldn't put in official reports. Eve powered it on, bypassing the password with a backdoor code the Quantico techs had developed. Officially, it didn't exist. Unofficially, every undercover agent knew about it. The files loaded. Eve's breath caught. Encrypted messages going back 6 months. She scrolled through them, her stomach churning with each revelation. Payment received. Santoro's shipment routes attached. V. Carter is getting too close. Need her redirected. What do you suggest?
Ross.
Let her find what she's looking for. Just make sure it's what we want her to find.
Veve Vargas.
Ross had been on Vargas's payroll for at least 6 months, maybe longer. But there was more. Eve clicked on a video file dated 3 weeks ago. It showed Ross meeting someone in a parking garage. The camera angle was wrong to see faces clearly, but Eve recognized Ross's nervous gestures. The other person handed him an envelope. This is the last time. Ross's voice came through, tinny and desperate. After this, I'm out. You're out when I say you're out. The other voice was calm, controlled. Female. You compromised Carter's operation. You fed Santoro false leads. You created exactly the chaos we needed. Now finish the job. What job? They're going to kill each other anyway.
No.
They're going to work together. And when they do, when they trust each other completely, you're going to make sure the FBI raids their location with shoot-to-kill orders.
No witnesses. No complications.
Eve's blood turned to ice. This wasn't Vargas. This was someone inside the bureau. She fast-forwarded. The figure turned slightly, and for just a frame, the face caught the light. Deputy Director Patricia Hammond. Eve's mentor. The woman who'd recruited her out of the academy, who'd guided her career, who'd personally assigned her to this operation. The room spun. Eve grabbed the desk for support, her mind racing through implications. Hammond was dirty. Hammond had orchestrated everything. Ross's corruption, the setup at the wharf, maybe even Ross's death when he got cold feet. But why? Eve kept searching and found another file. Financial records showing Hammond's son, her civilian son who worked in real estate, had purchased property worth $15 million. Property paid for through shell companies connected to Vargas. It clicked into place. Hammond wasn't just dirty. She was Vargas's protection inside the bureau, ensuring his operations ran smoothly while eliminating his competition. Santoro was the competition. And Eve was the weapon Hammond had sharpened to destroy him. The office door creaked. Eve spun, reaching for a gun she didn't have. Deputy Director Hammond stood in the doorway, her service weapon drawn but lowered. She looked disappointed, like a teacher catching a student cheating. I hoped I was wrong about you, Carter. You've been playing us from the start. Hammond stepped inside and closed the door. I've been protecting this country from men like Santoro for 30 years. If that means making deals with the devil, so be it. Vargas is controllable. Santoro isn't. You ordered Ross killed. Ross was weak. He would have talked. Hammond's voice was matter-of-fact. You, on the other hand, I thought had more spine. But here you are, stealing evidence, consorting with the enemy. You made me the enemy. Eve's voice cracked. You set me up to fail, to die, to become a scapegoat for your corruption. I set you up to do your job. Hammond raised her weapon slightly. Santoro needed to be eliminated. I gave you everything you needed to make that happen. Instead, you're playing house with him in some safe house, sharing secrets like teenagers in love. Eve's mind raced. Hammond knew about the safe house, which meant she'd been watching them. The camera. There had to be a camera. Where is he, Carter? Where's Santoro? I don't know what you're talking about. Hammond's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her expression changed. Surprise, then fury. You're smarter than I thought. The address you gave him was fake. Eve had texted Raph from the burner phone before entering the building. Hammond is dirty. Get out. Trust no one from Bureau. Will explain when I can. He's gone, Eve said. And in about 3 minutes, every piece of evidence on that tablet is going to upload to a secure server he controls. Everything. Your payments, your son's properties, your orders to Ross. All of it.
It was a bluff.
Eve hadn't had time to set up any upload. But Hammond didn't know that. The deputy director's face hardened. Then you've chosen your side. She raised her weapon fully now, aimed at Eve's chest. I'm sorry it came to this. You were a good agent once.
The report will say you attacked me.
That you'd been compromised by Santoro. That I had no choice. Eve backed up slowly, calculating distances, exits, survival odds. All of them were bad. One question, Eve said, stalling. When were you going to kill me? Before or after I killed Santoro? Hammond smiled coldly. After. Your death needed to mean something. Dying a hero, killed by the monster you tried to stop. That plays much better than dying a traitor. Her finger tightened on the trigger. The window exploded inward. Raph crashed through the window in a storm of glass and fury. He tackled Hammond before she could fire, both of them slamming into Ross's desk. Her gun skittered across the floor. Eve dove for it, came up with the weapon trained on the deputy director. Don't move. Hammond lay pinned beneath Raph's weight, breathing hard. Blood trickled from her temple, where she'd hit the desk. You're making a mistake, Carter. Kill me and you're a cop killer.
There's no coming back from that.
She's right, Raph said, climbing off Hammond but keeping himself between her and Eve. But that doesn't mean we let her walk. How did you? Eve started. Your text. I figured if Hammond was dirty, she'd come after you. So I followed. He pulled out his phone. And I've been recording everything for the last 3 minutes. Hammond's eyes widened. That recording is inadmissible. Illégale surveillance. I'm not the FBI, Raph smiled without humor. I don't play by your rules. This goes to every news outlet in the country if anything happens to either of us. Sirens wailed in the distance. Getting closer. She called it in before she came up. Eve realized. Backup is coming. We have maybe 2 minutes. Then we leave. Now, Raph grabbed the tablet from Ross's desk. Hammond laughed bitterly from the floor. Where exactly are you going to run? She's a federal agent. You're a wanted criminal. Every cop, every agent, every bounty hunter in the country will be looking for you. You'll be dead within a week. Maybe, Raph pulled Eve toward the door. But you'll go down with us. That recording hits the press. Your career is over. Your son goes to prison. Everything you've built turns to ash. They ran through the corridors, Hammond's shouts fading behind them. Eve's mind spun with the impossibility of what was happening. She was fleeing from her own people, running with a mobster, burning every bridge she'd ever built. The parking garage was their only shot. They burst through the stairwell door just as 3 federal vehicles screamed into the building's front entrance. There. Raph pointed to a black motorcycle tucked in the corner. Luca's bike. He leaves a spare here for emergencies. You're joking? You got a better idea? Eve climbed on behind him as the engine roared to life. Raph peeled out just as agents flooded into the garage behind them, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Federal agents. Stop the vehicle. Raph didn't stop. He blasted through the exit barrier, sending splinters flying, and rocketed into the empty pre-dawn streets. Eve clung to him, the city blurring past at insane speed. Behind them, 2 Bureau SUVs gave chase. They're going to box us in? Eve shouted over the wind. Not if we don't let them. Raph turned sharply into an alley, the bike tilting at a sickening angle. They emerged onto a side street, weaving through early morning traffic. But Raph wasn't heading away from the city. He was heading toward it.
Toward downtown.
What are you doing? Ending this. He pulled out his phone one-handed, insane at this speed, and made a call.
Luca.
The bar. Burn it. Everything.
Now.
Boss, what? Do it. Eve understood with crystalline clarity. The bar was where everything started. It was also where Raph kept his insurance, records, evidence, leverage on everyone from city councilmen to rival bosses. If Hammond wanted to bury them, that's where she'd go next. They skidded to a stop 3 blocks from Santoro's. Raph killed the engine. In the distance, smoke already billowed from the building's upper windows. Luca works fast, Raph muttered. Your own bar was already compromised. Hammond probably has it wired, bugged, monitored. Better it burns than becomes her evidence locker. He grabbed her hand. Come on. There's something inside I need. Are you insane? That building is on fire. Which means they won't expect us to go in. They ran toward the inferno. Fire trucks were just arriving, firefighters shouting orders. In the chaos, 2 more figures slipped in through the kitchen entrance. Raph knew every inch of this building, including the routes the fire hadn't reached yet. The back office. Raph kicked open a safe hidden behind a painting of his father. Inside was a metal box, which he grabbed without opening. What's in there? Eve coughed through the smoke. Leverage. Insurance. The real records. He shoved it into a bag. Everything Hammond wanted to destroy. A window exploded above them, raining glass. The ceiling groaned ominously. We need to go. Eve pulled him toward the exit. They burst out into the alley just as the roof collapsed inward with a sound like thunder. Raph stumbled, and Eve saw blood spreading across his shirt. Not a new wound, but an old one reopened from the wharf attack. You're hit.
Ai fine.
He wasn't fine. He was fading, the adrenaline wearing off, blood loss catching up. 2 black SUVs screeched into the alley's far end. More at the other exit. They were trapped. Hammond stepped out of the lead vehicle, flanked by 6 agents. Her head was bandaged, her face cold with fury. It's over, Carter. Put down the weapon. Step away from Santoro. You can still walk away from this. Eve looked at Raph, slumped against the wall, blood seeping through his fingers where he pressed aside. The metal box lay at his feet, their only leverage, their only proof. She could surrender, save herself, let Hammond spin whatever story she wanted. Or she could finish what they started. Eve raised her stolen gun. Not at Hammond. At the gas line running along the alley wall. You want to know what I learned undercover, ma'am? Eve's voice was steady. Sometimes the only way to win is to make sure everyone loses. She fired. The gas line ruptured. Fire from the bar touched the leaking fuel. The alley erupted in flames. 3 months later, Coastal Cafe, Lisbon. The morning sun turned the Atlantic into liquid gold. Eve, though she no longer went by that name, sat at a small table overlooking the water, nursing an espresso that had long gone cold. She'd changed her hair, now shoulder-length and honey blonde. Colored contacts turned her brown eyes blue. The scar along her jaw from the alley explosion was still visible if you looked closely, but most people didn't look closely anymore. Here, she was Sofia Ramos, an American expatriate writing a novel about crime and redemption. The irony wasn't lost on her. The explosion had saved them. In the chaos, fire, smoke, panicking agents, Raf had pulled them through a maintenance tunnel he'd built years ago for exactly this kind of emergency. They'd emerged 6 blocks away, stolen a car, and driven through the night until they reached one of Raf's emergency caches. Money, passports, medical supplies. Eve had stitched his wound in a motel bathroom while he gritted his teeth and told her about his sister Sophia, the real one. How she believed in justice so fiercely it killed her. How he'd taken her name for the fake passport as a reminder that maybe redemption was still possible. Use it, he'd said, pressing the passport into her bloody hands. Disappear. Start over. What about the evidence? Hammond. Luca has copies. He knows what to do. Raf had smiled through the pain. Sometimes the only way to win is to make sure everyone loses. Smart move, by the way. They'd separated at dawn.
No goodbyes.
Just a nod between two people who'd survived something impossible together. Eve hadn't heard from him since. Until today. The waiter brought her mail. The cafe held packages for regular customers. A single envelope, no return address, postmarked from Sao Paulo. Eve's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a newspaper clipping. The headline read, Deputy FBI Director arrested in massive corruption scandal. Links to international arms dealer exposed. The photo showed Hammond in handcuffs, her face a mask of fury and disbelief. Beside her, another photo, Miguel Vargas, also arrested, caught at the Mexican border trying to flee. The article detailed everything, the payments, the shell companies, the protection Vargas had bought inside the bureau. Hammond's son had turned state's evidence to save himself. Ross's tablet, the one Eve had found, had been anonymously delivered to the Justice Department along with financial records that corroborated everything. But there was more in the envelope. A small flash drive fell into her palm, and a note, handwritten in neat script. For saving me, thank you. 5 words. The same number she'd said to him that first night, a lifetime ago in a bar that no longer existed. Eve plugged the flash drive into her laptop with shaking hands. A single video file loaded. Raf appeared on screen, standing on a beach she didn't recognize. He looked different, beard gone, hair longer, wearing a simple white linen shirt. He looked almost peaceful. Agent Carter, he said, then corrected himself with a slight smile.
Eve.
If you're watching this, it means everything worked. Hammond and Vargas are in custody. Luca delivered the evidence like I asked, then disappeared. Smart kid. He looked out at the ocean behind him. You were right about a lot of things. About there being a line between justice and revenge. About innocent people mattering. My sister used to say the same things. He paused. I think you would have liked each other. The video jumped slightly, and edit. I'm out. Really out this time. The Santoro Empire is dissolved. I've liquidated everything. Paid restitution too. Well, let's call them parties I've wronged. Anonymous donations mostly. Won't undo the damage, but it's something. Another pause. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. I know you can't come back. The Bureau thinks you died in that explosion. We made sure of that. There's a grave in Virginia, with your name on it. Full honors, posthumous medal for dying in the line of duty. Your family thinks you're a hero. Eve's vision blurred with tears she hadn't let herself cry in 3 months. Maybe you're a hero. You certainly saved me. Not just from Hammond, but from becoming something I couldn't come back from. Raf smiled sadly. So thank you. For the 5 words that started this. For trusting me when you shouldn't have. For being the kind of person who shoots gas lines instead of taking the easy way out. He stepped back, and Eve saw a small house behind him, perched on a cliff overlooking turquoise water. I hope you find peace, Eve. Real peace. The kind my sister never got to have. He raised his hand in a half-wave. Maybe in another life, we meet as different people. Better people. The video ended. Eve sat there for a long time, watching the waves crash against the Lisbon shore. She thought about going back, trying to clear her name, reclaim her life. But that life was gone. Agent Evelyn Carter had died a hero. Sofia Ramos could live free. She closed the laptop and pulled out her journal, the novel she was supposedly writing. But instead of fiction, she wrote the truth. Everything that had happened. Every choice, every betrayal, every moment of unexpected grace. When future generations asked how corruption could take root in institutions meant to protect them, maybe the story would be an answer. Or, at least a warning. The cafe doorbell chimed as new customers arrived. Eve didn't look up. She had work to do, a new life to build, and for the first time in 7 years, she wasn't pretending to be someone else. She was finally just herself. Eve wrote 5 words at the top of a fresh page. "Thank you too, Mr. Santoro." Then she smiled, closed the journal, and walked out into the Portuguese sunshine. Behind her, the past burned like Santoro's bar, turned to ash and memory. Ahead of her, the future stretched out like an ocean, vast and unknown, and entirely her own. Somewhere across that ocean, on a different shore, a man who'd once been a monster learned how to be human again. And somewhere in between, the truth existed, complicated, messy, impossible to categorize. Just like the 5 words that had started it all.